But we're going to start with the backlash in this country over American President Joe Biden's cancellation of Keystone XL. Prime Minister Trudeau is expected to be talking about it right about now in his call with Joe Biden. Several premiers, though, want more than just talk. They want action. And they made that clear last night in their own call with Trudeau. One of them is Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe, and he joins us from Saskatoon. Welcome back to the program, Premier.
Well, thank you so much for making time for us.
Well, we're happy to have you. I want to know, what is it that you hope that the Prime Minister is saying right now to change Joe Biden's mind?
Well, I hope he's advocating ambitiously on behalf of the merits of this pipeline, this piece of infrastructure, and its investors and all Canadians. This is not an Alberta challenge. This is a Canada-U.S. challenge. That this is the permits for this pipeline have been retroactively removed. It is a challenge for our North American energy security. It will reduce the jobs on both sides of the border, and ultimately, I would say, is a step backwards on the environmental conversation as well. When you look at the merits of this being a net zero pipeline and some of the energy that is going into it.
Now, you have said that the federal government should find a way to compel the Biden administration on this. I want to understand what you're calling for. As you know well, Alberta Premier Jason Kenney has talked about sanctions, for instance. Would that be an example that you would support in terms of compelling the Biden administration?
Well, I think sanctions are always on the table. If you look back through history with the country of origin labeling years ago, you think of the steel tariffs, both for steel and aluminum heading both ways across the border. The conversations leading into the modernization of NAFTA into the USMCA. Sanctions were always on the table and were utilized from time to time. So they certainly should be on the table as we work our way through this really unprecedented removal retroactively of these permits. But first, the Prime Minister, and we had advocated with him last night and explained to him that he would hopefully put forward the merits of this pipeline with respect to jobs on both sides of the border, the energy security that it can provide for North America, as well as the environmental merits of the energy going in the pipe, as well as the operation of the pipe itself. And we would hope that President Biden will listen to those merits, because it is an important piece of infrastructure, and canceling it retroactively like we have does have implications on the investment environment as we move forward.
I appreciate the stakes here, the economic stakes, the number of jobs involved, but this was a campaign pledge by the Biden administration. It was one of his first executive orders. Is it realistic to expect him to backtrack on that?
Yeah, absolutely. The merits of this
would you do that? I mean, you're a leader. Could another premier, for instance, convince you to backtrack on an election pledge?
If I did not have all of the information on the products that, for instance, in this particular piece of infrastructure, the products that are going in it, from a relative sustainability perspective, are among the most sustainable in the world. If you think back, and here's Saskatchewan's energy and contribution to KXL. The product is coming out of the Lloydminster area. Investment in thermal projects there have reduced our greenhouse gas emissions by some 50% over the last few years in the energy that we are contributing to the existing KXL as well as the expansion. This is a good news project. It has great environmental standards, unlike anything I've seen from an operations perspective. And I would ask President Biden to listen to the case that will be put forward by our Prime Minister. I hope that's happening as we're speaking now, but also by provincial premiers, including myself, as we're reaching out to congressional and Senate representatives and members of President Biden's cabinet in the days ahead.
And yet we have Canada's ambassador saying that, they understand this, Kristen Hillman understands this decision to be a final one. Mark Garneau said on this program, we respect the decision. So presumably this is going to come up during the call tonight. Everybody expects that. But if there's no big movement out of this, what's your next move?
Well, we didn't take, when we weren't able to move forward with the modernization of NAFTA, by the first deadline, the second deadline, we didn't then step back and say, well, that's a final decision and there's no more discussions that should be occurring on the formation of the USMCA. So it is incumbent on our Prime Minister to continue to advocate for not only this project, but for a sound, solid investment environment in the future, where we are not retroactively removing permits on either side of the border when they have been provided by governments.
I do want to ask you about one more issue before we let you go. The Prime Minister mentioned today that during your call last night with you, the other premiers, that one of the things that was up for discussion was travel restrictions, and that you talked about a variety of measures. I'd like to know what you'd like to see in terms of new travel restrictions.
Well, we currently have very, very few international travel flights that are coming into the province of Saskatchewan. Any of our international travelers are quite often coming through Calgary or potentially Toronto. So we're working closely, in particular, with Alberta on some of the testing efforts and whatnot that they have in place. It hasn't been a large discussion in Saskatchewan international travel. I would say that if we are looking at increasing travel restrictions, there are consequences to that, consequences to the airlines that are operating and the sustainability of having access to those flights and actually, airlines like WestJet and Air Canada actually surviving so that they can continue to provide flights in a post-COVID world, so that when we get back to something that is a little bit more normal, and I'm hoping, like everyone else, that that's going to happen sooner rather than later. So we should be very careful, I think, in increasing our travel restrictions. However, I think there's opportunities for increased testing, increased efforts in and around the receiving airports.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there today. Thanks for your time, Premier. Response, I'm joined by Paul Lefebvre, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources, Seamus O'Regan. We've reached him today in Sudbury. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Catherine. Good to be here.
I want to ask you, a senior Republican told this show that President Biden's move to cancel Keystone is, quote, a kick in the teeth. You agree?
Well, certainly we're not happy with the decision. The Prime Minister has been clear since 2013 that he supports the Keystone project. The Minister has made many efforts to support it, with Minister Savage from Alberta, as well as with the Ambassador, to making the case. We've been having discussions with TC Energy over the past months, and as well as with unions. And so we're really concerned about the workers in this case, but as has been said, we are going to continue to make the case, because at the end of the day, if the U.S. will be obviously consuming oil, we want it to be Canadian oil. So even though the decision has been made, we want to continue to have certainly strong relationships with the new administration and continue to advocate for Canadian resources.
Paul Lefebvre, you say you're going to continue to make the case. Ambassador Kristen Hillman says, for instance, that they consider the decision on this to be final. Minister Marc Garneau says he understands and respects that President Biden is going to keep his campaign pledge. So, I mean, like, level with us and the workers affected by this project. Is it dead?
No, what I'm saying is that at the end of the day, the U.S. are the largest oil consumers in the world. 50% of the Canadian oil is exported to, 50% of the imports to U.S. are from Canada. So there's a market opportunity for Canada. So that's
what I'm asking you, is this project
to continue. Well, certainly, if the Biden administration has said that they don't want to follow it, and we respect that decision, but we're just saying that there are opportunities. We need to look at the opportunities and the similarities between the goals of both administration as we move forward. And for us, it's supporting workers and continuing to support Canadian energy. Okay,
and so I'm going to ask you just one more time. While I appreciate your optimism about opportunity, this opportunity, put an X through it?
Well, like I said, it's at the end of the day, we respect the Biden decision. We're not happy with that decision, but we think that there are other opportunities that may come to fruition, and that's why we need to continue to having that conversation. What are the end goal of this U.S. administration? As I said, the U.S. will still be consuming oil at the end. So we have an obligation to make sure that we are continuing to support workers and support the Canadian jobs, because we can export a lot of that energy to the U.S. We have many opportunities, and we'll continue to advocate for that.
You're putting the emphasis on moving on, but as you know very well, Alberta Premier Jason Kenney, and in fact, I just spoke to Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe earlier in the program, talking about sanctions. Would the federal government support that?
Well, Catherine, I don't see how a trade war with our biggest customer would be good for workers in Alberta and Saskatchewan right now. So right now, as I said, we're focused on continuing to having those conversations with the U.S. as what the opportunities are there, as they have a plan, a climate plan, pretty similar to the one that we have. We see opportunities in hydrogen, renewables, carbon capture, geothermal. A lot of these opportunities, actually, Alberta and Saskatchewan will be able to benefit. So we're going to support and continue advocating to certainly on clean energy. And at the same time, if there's an opportunity for Canadian oil, and I know that the U.S. is consuming it, we're going to make that case as well.
Okay, well, that sounded like a pretty clear no on sanctions. I do wonder, though, about something else that Premier Kenney is saying. He told my colleague Vashi Kapelos that your government folded on this issue in a way that you didn't when it came to aluminum and steel. How do you respond to that?
No, we didn't. From day one, like I said, the Prime Minister has been supportive of Keystone. The Minister of Natural Resources has been supportive, having those important conversations. There's a new administration. They ran on this politically, so we need to respect their decision. But that does not mean that we fold. That doesn't mean that we stop advocating for Canadian jobs and Canadian workers, because there's a huge market in the U.S. We've seen that there are many opportunities, and we're going to continue making that case. That's why at this point, with this new administration, it's important that we sit down together and look at the similarities and opportunities and make sure that we support those and support Canadian businesses to have access to that.
Does that mean that the Alberta government just made a bad bet investing in this particular project?
Listen, the Alberta government made a decision to invest in this project. It was up to them to make the decision. That being said, we still believe in the workers in Alberta, and we see that there are other opportunities. So it doesn't matter if they're a heavy equipment operator is lifting up a pipe or a big piece of a type of equipment. We were focused on making jobs and providing jobs to workers in Saskatchewan, and that's what we'll be focused on.
Okay, we're going to have to leave the conversation with you there today, but obviously the broader conversation is not over. Thank you for your time, Paula Fave.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Vashi Kapelos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.